We're excited to welcome everyone to the first ever virtual Purpose on Tap. We have a simple purpose to encourage men to find their purpose in Christ. And today we have a really cool opportunity to hear from John Gordon. John is married and father of two, lives down in Florida, which is even cooler that we're getting him to speak when he's not even in Atlanta. So if you guys can welcome John Gordon, this should be a really cool talk, and everyone listen up.
In someone, and then someone experiences it on the inside and the troubles that come with that. And because of that virus that's affecting people on the inside, we're seeing all this chaos and all this world catastrophe in the world based on something on the inside. We're seeing it now on the outside. And I believe that in so many ways it works in our souls and our lives as well. The sin of the world, the challenge of the world, it all starts with who we are on the inside. Everything on the outside is a manifestation of what we deal with on the inside. It all started in the garden where we had Adam and Eve, and God said that you can eat from all the trees in this garden. You just can't eat from this one tree. And what did the serpent do then? The serpent said, if you eat from this tree, you will be like God. So did God really say you could eat from all the trees in the garden? Did God say you could eat from all of them? But if you eat from this one, you'll be like God. Think about that for a moment. God gave Adam and Eve abundance. He said you can eat from all these trees. And what the enemy did, what the serpent did, was cause them to focus on what they lacked instead of what God gave them in abundance. He had them focus on the narrow thing, the one thing they couldn't do, instead of all the things that they could. It all started there. It all started by saying, did God really say you couldn't eat from all the trees in the garden? What he was doing in that moment was casting doubt that God can't be trusted. And that's the enemy's first ammo, that God can't be trusted. And we see an event like this. And so often we lose our faith. Our foundation gets shaken. We get fearful, we get scared, and we lose our faith. We lose our trust in God based on the circumstance. And so what I could see happening right now, and what is happening, is this is a huge spiritual attack that we are all dealing with. And it all started in the garden. We can learn so much from that experience and from what happened. And so what I want to share today are the 5 Ds that the enemy uses to separate us from God. And the first D is doubt. He casts doubt that God can't be trusted. Why does he cast that doubt? Because if we will doubt God, we will then believe the enemy's lies. And if we believe the enemy's lies, we won't trust God. The enemy is so good at convincing us that God can't be trusted that so many people don't even believe in God around the world. Like there's so many people that actually don't even believe that God exists. That's how good the enemy is. But maybe you don't have to be an atheist to actually doubt God or not believe in God, because so often we act like we don't truly trust and believe in God, even if we are people of faith. And I believe now more than ever, we have to trust in God. Are we all dealing with challenges and issues? You bet. As a writer and speaker, I was having my greatest year yet. As a writer and speaker, I speak on events on stages around the country. I get paid a lot of money to speak to corporations and sports teams and so forth. I don't do churches very much, so this is something new for me. But I speak to a lot of these organizations, and right now I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in canceled events that I'm not doing. But you know what? I am still trusting in God, knowing that He has a plan and that we will somehow, some way become better because of what we're dealing with right now. Somehow, some way, we will grow. And through this experience, we can focus on what we've lost, or we can focus on what we will gain. And I truly believe that if we trust in God, we will find what we will gain through this process. It's all about what we're learning and growing and improving and experience in this moment that's going to help see us through it. But it's our trust in God that where it begins. But the enemy wants to cast doubt that God can't be trusted. So just know that. So right now, if you're having fear, if you're having doubt, it's the enemy messing with you, letting you know that God can't be trusted. But we need to maintain that trust. The enemy then uses the second D to help create the doubt, and it's distort. What the enemy does is he takes truth and he distorts them with lies. Lies that God can't be trusted. Lies like if you eat from this tree, if you eat this fruit, you will be like God. Even though if you read in Genesis before this, it said that man was made in the likeness and image of God. You see, they didn't eat the fruit because they wanted to be like God. They already were like God. They ate the fruit because the enemy convinced them that they weren't. And we will always be attacked in the place of our identity, of who we truly are. And right now, I have a feeling that many of us are being attacked right now in our identity, our performance, our success. In so many ways, our foundation is being shaken. And when that foundation is being shaken, it goes to the heart of our identity, of who we are. Adam and Eve were attacked in the place of their identity. And we are often attacked in the place of our identity as men, as performers, as providers, as wanting to be successful, as wanting to make money for our family. So often we are attacked in that place. But the enemy, what he does is he distorts truth in order to do that. And so what you have to realize is those negative thoughts that are coming in that are attacking you in the place of your identity are not coming from you. How do I know? How do I know your negative thoughts are not coming from you? You would never choose to have a negative thought. I would never choose one, would you? No, I would never choose a negative thought. Thoughts are always coming in. Thoughts exist in a spiritual place. No one has ever found a thought inside of a brain. The brain is the hardware. Consciousness is the software. And we're always downloading these thoughts. And I believe that there's a spiritual battle going on between the devil and God. I believe that there is a battle going on between good and evil. And so often those negative thoughts are trying to sabotage us from the destiny that God has for us, from the plan that he has. And this battle is being waged at a spiritual level, and yet it's also being waged in our minds. There is a battle for our minds that is going on. And so we're always being filled with these negative thoughts and these lies, that we're not enough, that we're not going to get through this, that our future is hopeless, that I can't provide for my family the way I want to be, that my best days are behind me, not ahead of me, that I don't have what it takes to succeed going through this. What if this happens and that happens? So all these thoughts are coming in, and more negative thoughts are coming in. And by the way, the enemy is known as the father of lies for a reason, because he is always lying to us. But what did Jesus do in the wilderness when the devil brought him there and started to lie to him and tempt him? He gives us a blueprint on how to win the battle of our mind. What he did was he said, "It is written, it is written, it is written." He spoke truth to the lies. And that is our game plan. That is our power source, is to speak truth to the lies. It's to know the truth, live the truth, speak the truth. And so when those negative thoughts come in, just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean you have to believe it. Don't believe the lies. Instead, what you want to do is speak truth to the lies. Dr. James Gill, the best advice I ever heard. He's the only guy on the planet that completes 6 double Ironman triathlons. That's double Ironman, which means you do an Ironman and then a day later you do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. He was asked how he did it. He said this: "I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself." He said, if I listen to myself, I hear all the negative, all the fear, all the doubt. But if I talk to myself, I can feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. He would memorize and recite scripture that would fuel him, and he would finish these races. We need to speak truth to these lies. And the truth is, we're here to do great things. The truth is, we were made in the likeness and image of God. The truth is, he has a plan for our life. The truth is, Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. The truth is, God is with us. He never said it would be easy. God said, I will be with you. And the truth is, our faith doesn't make life easier. It makes us stronger. And the truth is that stars shine the brightest in the darkness. And I believe that people who have faith and who are positive shine the most through adversity. That is truth. And the truth is that we want to be great as men. We want to do great things because deep down we know there is greatness within us. But then we have these voices that say we're not great. And that is the battle every day. And so the more we walk in that truth and speak truth and live the truth, the more we will be more powerful in walking in that. So it's about trusting God and trusting his truth and living that truth and speaking truth to the lies on a daily basis to overcome this battle. Why? Because the third D is discouragement. And so the enemy wants to discourage us. See, the enemy knows that he cannot beat us himself. So what does he do? He gets us to beat ourselves by filling us up with the lies and negative thoughts and fear. We believe those lies. We then even reinforce them because we think they're coming from us. Who would ever choose to have a negative thought? I never would. You wouldn't. Yet we believe those lies, and then we feel guilty and shameful for even having those thoughts and having those lies within us. And so we get discouraged. We don't give up because it's hard. We give up because we get discouraged. And so it's essential that we know this truth and we encourage ourselves and each other on a daily basis. Chewy Kathy said, how do you know if a man or a woman needs encouragement? If they're breathing. We all need encouragement along the way. And Zig Ziglar was once given a hard time about motivation. And they said, Zig, motivation doesn't last. He said, either does bathing. That's why you got to do it every day. We need to stay encouraged more during this time. We need to speak truth to ourselves on a daily basis and read God's truth. We need to make sure that we're filling up every day. We got to feed the positive on a daily basis. Weed the negative. The mind is like a garden. Feed the positive. Weed the negative. Do it one day. It's not going to do a whole lot. Do it for a week. Do it for a month. Do it for a year. Do it for 7 years. Do it for a lifetime. That garden of your mind starts to look pretty magnificent. I know about this. My mind was not very strong years ago. My soul was not very strong. My spirit was not strong. My wife almost left me because I was so miserable and so negative. I lost my job during the .com crash. Didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. Didn't know how I was going to support my family. My world was crumbling around me. No insurance for the family. But that's when my faith was born. That's when I learned to rely on God. That's where I came to trust in him. And I saw his miracle. I saw him carry us through the most difficult time of my life. And then during the Great Recession, I would write a book called The Shark and the Goldfish, which is about thriving through change and riding the waves of change. And I realized that you have to go through discomfort in order to grow. You have to go through discomfort in order to change. You have to embrace the change and ride it to a successful future. That we're all comfortable. We've been comfortable, and now we're feeling very uncomfortable right now. But through this discomfort is how we grow. Through the discomfort, we find our faith. Through this discomfort, we learn to rely on God and trust in him. There's only two ways we can go right now, right? We can go at it alone, and we will be miserable, and we will find despair and depression and sadness, or we can go with God and invite God into our lives right now more than ever. Say, God, I need you. I can't do this alone. God, I need you. Please provide for me. Please provide for my family. Help us get through this, God. Give me the strength to get through this time. Those are my prayers like no other during that time. And I became someone who then could help others through this challenge. And while I'm going through tough times as well, like everyone, I feel so much stronger now. I feel so much more prepared now because of what I went through. And I would never be able to share what I'm sharing now if I didn't go through those times. And so I know the power of encouragement, of encouraging yourself, encourage each other, and relying on God and having trust in him through this time. The fourth D is distraction. And so the enemy is using all of this right now, I think, to distract us, to keep us from what matters most. And so this is a great time to focus on what matters most. This is a great time to grow deeper. A good friend, Matthew West, the singer, we were talking the other day, and he said, I can't help think with all this social distancing that it's going to lead to a spiritual closeness with God. And my hope is that during this time of distraction, we'll actually focus on what matters most. And maybe you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe you're not doing anything bad, but there's a quote that says, if the devil will make you bad, he'll make you busy. He'll get you focused on all the things that don't matter instead of what does matter. And I think during this time, right now, what we're experiencing is, I don't know if you are, but it's like the world slowed down, and yet I feel like I'm spinning faster and faster. Do you feel that way? Raise your hand if you do. I can't see a lot of pictures, but I think more and more people are feeling that way. And so here we are being distracted of everything that's going on. We're being distracted internally on a daily basis. And this is a great time to not allow ourselves to be distracted, but to focus on what matters most. Let me take you back into the garden. In the garden, it says that the fruit was appealing. The fruit was appealing. And so Eve was very distracted. And I believe they were distracted because the enemy casted and created doubt, and then distorted truth with lies, and then discouraged. And when you're knocked off balance and you don't feel like you have your foundation, that's when we make mistakes. That's when our wounds come out. That's when our flaws take hold. That's when we do stupid things and wrong things that hurt our relationships and hurt our family and hurt our future. And so remember, during this time, focus on what matters most. And Jesus gives us a blueprint there, right? It's all about loving God with all our heart, mind, and soul, loving our neighbors, ourselves, loving ourselves through this time. Just to know right now, it's okay to not be okay. Right now, it's okay to not be okay. No one has ever dealt with a global pandemic before. I mean, I don't think we've ever dealt with anything like this. And so we don't know how to feel in many ways. We don't know how to experience. We're going to have these ups and downs. Just know that it's very normal what we're going through to feel that way. But just remember, do not allow yourself to get brought down the spiral staircase of despair. Instead, feel it, but then choose another path, choose another way. Focus on what matters most. Trust in God, focusing on encouragement, trust in your relationships, and invest in your family during this time. It's the most important thing we can do. And then finally, the last D is divide. And so the enemy's sole goal is to divide and separate us from God. It's the sole goal, to separate man from God. And I've been thinking a lot about, and I just wrote a book called The Garden. So this comes from my book, The Garden. It's my first Christian fable. It's a strong fable. I've written a lot of these business fables. I had to write a thing in the introduction, like warning, this is a spiritual book. This is a faith-filled book, because I want people to understand what this is really all about. And going back to the garden, right? The whole goal was to separate man from God in the garden. That is what happened, right? Because of these D's. They believed the lies, they ate the fruit, and that represented the separation of man from God. So once we understand that, we can understand how that now affects us in our daily lives. The enemy wants to separate us from God. How does he do it? Through doubt, through distortion, through discouragement, through distraction, and then ultimately division. And the word anxious, by the way, means divided. So literally when we are anxious, we feel divided. We feel separate from God. And there's so much anxiety now around the world, and you could just feel that they are feeling separate from God. But if you trust in God, and oh, by the way, I should back up. There's a tree of life there next to the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden. There were two trees. And the one tree represented man wanted to do it on their own, taking the bait, eating the fruit, basically going their own way, disobeying God. The tree of life represented the reliance on God, trust in God, faith in God, oneness with God. And so man had a choice in that moment. And I was saying earlier, why in the first place did this have to happen? I was thinking about that. Like, why did this even exist? Why is this story even part of our journey and part of our life? Because in the space between man and God, evil exists. In the space between man and God, evil exists. And so when man is separated from God, right, evil exists. And so in that space, there's evil. And I was thinking, why does God allow it? Why does God allow the evil exist? Because he has to give us a choice. And those two trees represent that choice. Will we choose the choice of disobedience, of going at it alone, or will we choose a complete reliance and trust in God? And so the answer to that division and that disobedience is Jesus. And so I was baptized in 2006. Erwin McManus, pastor, his sermons led me to Christ. I saw how there was a battle going on, and I understood that I needed a savior because I couldn't save myself. And I gave my life to God. I accepted Jesus as my savior. I was 35 years old, and it would change the course of my life. It would change everything. changed my marriage, changed me, changed everything. Wrote a book with my wife called Relationship Grit. Comes out in August or September, about how to stay together through all the ups and downs. And it's our faith journey as well, about how I came to faith, how she came to faith after me, and how God became the center of our marriage, and it changed everything. But when I think about Jesus, I know that what happened in the garden, he gives us the answer on the cross. The separation that happened in the garden of man from God gets reconciled on the cross, where man is united back to God. And Jesus reconciles man to God through himself. And in that oneness, in that unity, we find peace, we find joy, we find trust, we find faith, and we find a complete reliance on God for our lives. And so the answer to these 5 Ds is Jesus, and love wins. And so I just want to encourage you during this time to just see how this battle is playing out, because you can watch around the world. You can watch what's happening on TV. You can watch what's happening in your own communities and in your own life. You will see these 5 Ds play out, and you will understand that this is the enemy's game plan to divide us and separate us from each other and from God. But God gives us the answer. God gives us the winning game plan. Once you know how the enemy's coming at you, you can counter it. The problem today is that most people don't know they're in a spiritual battle. So they're getting their butts kicked. If the enemy knows you're in a battle and you don't, guess what? The enemy is going to win. You have to recognize that you're in a battle. This is the enemy's game plan, those 5 Ds. And now you have the answer. Now you know how to armor yourself to win the battle. And once you do, you can be victorious. You already are victorious, but now you can truly be victorious to understand what you have to do. And it is trust, radical trust. It is giving your life to God. It is truly surrendering. It is encouragement. It is focusing on what matters most, right? And it is making sure that we continue to speak truth every day and not allowing those lies to get in the way, not allowing that discouragement to set in. And if we do that, I truly believe we will win the battle. I don't believe the enemy wants the garden out there. I believe that I'm going to get a lot of crap when it comes out. I believe I may lose a lot of clients, but I don't care. The truth needs to be shared, and I'm going to share it. And we need men who are willing to stand up for God and stand up for each other, so that we can win the battle for each other and ultimately for our families in this world. So I'd love to take some questions.
John, hey, no, that was great. Thank you. That was very inspirational. We've got a fair amount of great questions coming in. So first one, if you were to look at your 30 or 35-year-old self today, what advice would you give yourself, and what would you have done differently?
I wouldn't do anything differently, because I became who I am because of it. So I wouldn't change a thing, right? So right now we have a choice. Are we gonna become less? Or are we gonna become more? The world is changing, but are we changing? Are we focusing on what we've lost or what we will gain? And right now we're going through a time where we have that opportunity where the change is happening. And I believe we can use this to adapt, ultimately to advance, and ultimately to thrive in the future. And so, but if I had to tell myself again, to answer that, if I had to tell myself like what I would do differently, I would do everything I'm doing now. I would have trusted in God more. I would have surrendered to God earlier. I would have given my life to him. I would have been a better husband. I would have been a better father. I would have been, a better man to my wife early on. I would have really, lived these principles that I know now, but I didn't, I was wounded. I didn't know them then. I was about me. I was definitely a narcissist focused on me. I mean, when we got married, and I literally get back from the honeymoon and decide to run for city council of Atlanta when I'm 26, 27 years old. Like, that's a great way to start a marriage. Honey, I'm going to run for office. And my wife was my campaign chair. Like, not a great decision, because it was about me and success back then, rather than about serving and being a great man for my wife. So I would have also, what I've done differently is I would have said a prayer every night with my wife like we do now. That transformed our marriage. God, we invite you into our marriage to love us, to unite us, to heal us, and to strengthen us, so we can grow strong together and serve you together and raise children that will glorify and honor you, God. So I would have basically learned to say that prayer early on.
That was great. Thank you, John. All right, here's another question. what advice would you give us, for those of us who are struggling right now, to be able to kickstart some type of motivation or their faith in the times that we're going through right now?
It's just really every day, just feeding yourself every day with positivity. Again, it's getting up, it's reading Proverbs, it's reading scripture, it's fueling yourself. I mean, I'm not trying to be self-promotional, but I got a free daily positive. It's called dailypositive.com, dailypositive.com. And I'm sending out every day a quote, an encouragement every single day to just try to encourage people who are going through tough times. You know, there's a story about a man who goes to the village to speak to the wise man. And he says, I feel like I have two dogs inside of us. I have this positive, optimistic, and energetic dog, mean-spirited, angry, negative dog, and they fight all the time. I don't know who's going to win. And the wise man thinks for a moment and says, I know who's going to win, the one you feed the most. So feed the positive dog. So to kickstart every day, start with feeding yourself. How do you do that? I mean, I would start with gratitude. Research shows we can't be stressed and thankful at the same time. Cannot be stressed and thankful at the same time. So if you're feeling blessed, you won't be stressed. So what I do every day is I take a walk of gratitude in the morning. Get up, take a walk of gratitude. I'm thankful I'm alive. I'm struggling, but I'm alive. I got lungs to breathe, right? Fresh air. I got a life to live. I got a family that I'm going to go through this with. So many people wish they had what we had in this moment. I've lost both my parents. And I think when you lose both your parents, you have a different perspective on life. Like I'm not afraid to die. I really, truly want to live. And I'm not going to allow life to determine ultimately how I feel and think. There's a story about the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. This is such a great story. Wrote a little book called The Coffee Bean with Damon West. Damon West spent 7 years in jail. Learned this lesson from a fellow prisoner in jail that helped him get through jail. Damon now speaks to Clemson and Alabama and Georgia, and I speak to Clemson every year for the last 8 years. And Damon and I met through Dabo Sweeney. He said, you got to hear this guy's story. So we wrote a little book called The Coffee Bean. Carrot, egg, and coffee bean. You put the carrot into hot water. What happens to the carrot? Boiling hot water. It gets softened. It gets weakened by its environment. You put an egg into boiling hot water. What happens? It gets hardened. Well, right now we can allow the environment to weaken us and cause us to crumble from the inside out. The pressure, the fear, the stress, the anxiety, it can weaken us. Or we can get bitter and angry and frustrated and be like the egg. We don't want to be like either of those. What we want to be like is the coffee bean. And when you put that coffee bean into boiling hot water, what happens? Well, that coffee bean transforms the water. Instead of being impacted by its environment, that coffee bean transforms its environment. We don't even call it water anymore. We give it a new name. We call it coffee. And so that's our charge, is to transform from the inside out. And Jesus said, the kingdom of God is inside you. You are more powerful than the circumstances that you face. This too shall pass. God gives us a promise for the future. We have to trust in his promises. I have seen his miracles. I have experienced his miracles. And I know that, again, he is with us through this challenging time. Do not buy into the fear and the lies. Continue to trust and have faith in him. That's what I would say. Trust and faith and surrender to God. Don't hold on. You can't do it on your own. And I think that's what's happening so much now. We've been so successful. We've had so much prominence, so much control. And now we have lost control. And as we lose control, that's where we find our greatest power. That we're not strong enough, but we now have to rely on a greater strength. And that only comes from God.
Thank you, John. And you may not know, but you inadvertently made a plug with your coffee comment there. One of our POT founders has started a coffee business as well, and it may or may not be called 0 Mile Coffee. Something that you said that I've just really been kind of wrapping my head around. I really like it, that it's okay to not be okay in times like this. That's very reassuring. We have another question that's just came in, and it's, are you naturally this motivated, or is this something that we can all learn how to do?
So glad you asked that. I usually talk about that in my usual talks. You know what? No, I'm not naturally positive. I grew up in Long Island, New York, a Jewish Italian family, a lot of food, a lot of guilt, a lot of wine, a lot of whining. And my dad was a New York City police officer, undercover narcotics. And so my dad was shot a few times. He wasn't very positive, a very loving man, very loving. but the most negative guy on the planet. You get up in the morning, hey, good morning, Dad. He'd say, what's so good about it? So my dad was Al Bundy before Al Bundy was Al Bundy. And I have a feeling some of you have no idea Al Bundy is. But growing up in that environment, it really made me want to be a more positive person. And during the dot-com crash, and as my world was falling apart, it really came to a head. And that's when my wife threatened to leave me. She said, if you don't change, like, I love you, but I'm not going to spend my life with someone who makes me so miserable. And so that's when I had to change. That's when I was forced to change, to truly surrender, rely on God. All these things happen at once to lead me in that direction. And so, yeah, I'm not naturally positive. I got to work at it. I am a pessimistic optimist. And so I go towards the pessimistic side first. Like when all this happened, like I was hit pretty hard. Like this rocked me. I was having the best year ever. And this rocked me. And at first I went down that, the stages of grief, right? Denial, then anger, and then sadness, and then acceptance. And I'm at acceptance now. And so while others are now like really having a tough time, I'm coming on strong, and I'm only going to get stronger and stronger as time goes on, because I do have faith. My pessimism, where I'm relying on me, gives way to eternal optimism, where I'm now relying on God. And that's where my power comes from. Dabo Sweeney built his program at Clemson on Galatians 6:9. And when he was 6-7 in 2010, it looks like he was going to be fired. Guy just had optimism and faith. He just built his program on faith. When they lost the national championship just recently to LSU, I texted them 2 days later, how you doing? It was their time, their moment. He said, yeah, it was their time. He said, but we're about to have the best decade in college football ever. It's going to be the roaring 20s. Like 2 days later, not even thinking about the past. If you are constantly thinking about what this year stole from you, you're going to be in sadness and despair and anger. We can't go backwards. We can't live there anymore. We have to go forwards. You can't be thinking about what kind of year it was going to be, because we don't know what would have been, but we know what we will create and what we will build by our actions and by our faith, by our optimism, ultimately by our belief.
Great. Thanks, John. We got a few more questions that we want to get over to you, knowing that you have some other obligations tonight. Next question is, knowing that our mistakes and past have created our journey and make us who we are, how do you prevent the fear of your kids making big mistakes, even though that will be a part of their journey?
Hardest thing to do as a parent, to truly surrender. My son is 19. My daughter is 21. Daughter went to Clemson, and she's out in LA right now, and was acting and working as a restaurant, and now she's going around, driving around, doing Postmates, trying to provide for herself, because I'm teaching her self-reliance and that she's got to make her own way. My son's 19, tennis player at Clemson, difficult year this year, dealt with some mental health challenges, some depression, and just a tough spring semester. He's home, and came home, and this has been a blessing for us to spend time together now. So I'm finding something positive. There are things to find from this. And we have this conversation all the time. He's not very deep in his faith right now. I talked to him about God, and he just like, you know what? I'm just not there yet. I said, yeah, but you're making all these bad decisions and choices. He's like, I know, I have to make them, Dad. It's my journey. It's my path. He's like, if God's meant to find me, or I'm meant to find God, then it's going to happen. Now, I truly believe he's going to have a moment where God lifts him up and changes his life in a big way. And he's going to be a big influence for God. I truly believe that. I hold out that hope. I hold that in faith. The hardest thing to do as a parent. And it really is to say, you know what, God, you love him more than I do. And he's your child more than mine. Because I saw my mom pass away, and I saw her take her last breath. And I was there, but guess what? When she left, that was it. Now she's with God. And so to me, I think that's the most important relationship we can have, is with God. And so it's about him and God. So my goal is to try to guide him there, but he's not ready for it. He's not there right now. He was a very spiritual kid when he was younger. He's almost like resisting. And so often we resist the most what we need the most. And there's a spiritual battle going on with him. And I know it's happening. And so the enemy is definitely messing with him. And he's believing those lies. And yet he even knows it, because he's heard this before. He's heard me talk about this. He knows it. And yet he's not willing to go there. So the hardest thing is to know what your kids should do, and they're not doing it. And so you really just have to trust that they're on a journey. It's their path. And if something's going to be hard and they're going to make the wrong decisions, it's going to be a difficult life for them, then you really have to be trusting and open to that, because God's giving them a choice as well. Trust in me,
Yeah.
or choose the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or choose the tree of life. It's your choice. Which one are you going to choose? And we all have that choice.
John, hey, thanks. That's great perspective. And seeing as I made zero good choices as a teenager or a college student, I hope that my dad has the same perspective that you do. So we've got one more question for you here. And this is a good one. How did you go from a Jewish person living in New York City to a Christian?
Well, it was Long Island, New York, even
Long
worse.
Island. Okay, let's be specific.
Straight out of Long Island. Yeah, I played lacrosse at Cornell University, and grew up in a Jewish Italian family. So my dad, who raised me, was Italian. So we always celebrated Christmas and stuff, but it was never like we really didn't have any religion or God. We never went to church, never went to temple. And it was really all God. I mean, I was a seeker when I was in Atlanta. My wife and I were really into New Age and Buddhism and meditation and all that good stuff. We'd go to see Deepak Chopra and his seminars. We'd come to Atlanta, all that good stuff. And then moved to Jacksonville. And that's when God started to work through me. When I lost my job and everything, I literally cried out, God, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I know I'm here for a reason. Writing and speaking came to me. I started doing that a little bit. Then had some success early on, but then everything stopped. And then I'm now going within. A friend of mine gives me sermons by Erwin McManus, and one was called Why I Follow Jesus. And that's what I'm going with tonight. I'm going on Erwin McManus's, for his church out in LA. We're doing a thing with his leadership group. So we're doing that after this. But so think about that. Erwin has these tapes and these CDs at the time. I listened to them. It was CDs. Wasn't that old, so it was CDs. And I listened to them, and it really, really spoke to me for the first time. And I said, God, if there is something to this Jesus, I'm open. Show me the signs. Next thing you know, I start seeing the signs everywhere. Like, Jesus is the answer signs. I literally saw them on the road. Everywhere I go, I start seeing these signs. Driving down to Orlando, I'm looking to the left, and I heard, look. And I turn, and there's a sign that says, Jesus is the answer. It happens so often. So this is really the wild part. I'm going to see a Buddhist energy healer because I have all these stomach problems, trying to get this guy to hopefully help me. And he was a pretty wise guy. And I said to him, so I'm seeing all these signs that say Jesus is the answer. What do you make of it? He said, oh, that's God's system for taking our soul pain. He goes, Christians call it sin. I call it soul pain. He said, Jesus takes your soul pain. He takes your heavy vibrational energy, because you can't connect to a perfect, harmonious, energetic God if you have this heavy vibrational energy. So he takes it to allow you to connect. I said, wow. I said, can I take someone else's soul pain? He said, can you handle your own? He said, Christianity is like spiritual cheating. He said, all you do is believe and receive. He said, I'm a Buddhist. I want to see if I can obtain enlightenment on my own. And I walked out of there. It made so much sense to me. I believed in a God that would want to take my soul pain and my sin, a God that would want to reconcile me to himself. I said, wow, I get it now. Like, for the first time I got it, was a Buddhist energy healer combined with Erwin McManus's sermons about Jesus that led me to Christ. And I walked out and said, all right, I'm going to give this Jesus a shot. And then he changed me from the inside out, literally transformed me from the inside out in so many ways. Like, just unbelievable. Like, who I am today is so different from who I was. And my brother actually gave his life to Jesus at a Catholic church, because he saw the difference in me and the change in me. And then he gave his life. We're both married to Irish Catholic women and Catholic women. So, we both had women who were Christian, but now we, both accepted Jesus as well. And it just changed us. So it's a strange story, but it's true. And that's how I gave my life to God. And now I know my calling is to help people get closer to him.
Hey, John, thank you again for sharing tonight virtually with us in this unique time of uncertainty that we're in, and just helping us become better fathers, sons, husbands, brothers, and colleagues. So again, we thank you. I do want to mention the importance of this weekend and how we will all be celebrating it in a unique fashion that none of us have done before. Make sure that you stay positive, be present, be grateful and thankful for what Jesus did for us and for our sins, and just enjoy the weekend as much as you can. If you want, get dressed up in your Sunday Easter best and just enjoy that meal and celebration with your family at your home, and continue to be safe. John, before you sign off, I know you've got a meeting here in a few minutes with some people that are probably more important than us. One final thought. Could you share with us one final thought before you go?
Yeah, I just want to share you like a leadership thing. Like as men, we're leaders, and you know what? Maybe you don't lead a large team, but if you lead the people around you, you're a leader. If you influence one person, you are a leader. So we have an opportunity right now to lead the people around us. And I talked about the coffee bean, and we truly lead from the inside out. Always remember the power is on the inside to lead others and to make a greater difference. So being positive doesn't just make you better, it makes everyone around you better. And so right now, our families and the people in our lives are watching us. They are looking to see how we respond, how we lead. And it's important that we lead ourselves in order to lead others. And you can't do it alone. So faith is about radical, just trusting God, surrender to God. And in that surrender, we find a greater peace and joy. Don't try to do it on your own. Don't try to stay positive on your own. Like, I'm not Mr. Positive, like Pollyanna positive. Pessimists do not change the world, right? Naysayers say you can't do it. Complainers, they complain about problems, but they don't solve them. Critics write words, but they don't write the future. Throughout history, it is the positive leaders, the believers, the dreamers, the doers that ultimately change the world. Think about Jesus. He transformed the world by investing in his 12. He invested in his 12. He had one energy vampire, but he invested in those 12. And those 12 would go on to change the world because of the relationships he developed with them. So we have an opportunity right now to develop relationships with the people that matter most to us, to invest in our families, invest in our friends, invest in our neighbors, invest in our communities, and use this time to really look for ways to love and serve and care. Love, serve, and care. Love others, serve others, show you care. That's how you truly lead from the inside out. That's how Jesus led. He loved, he served, and he cared. And of course, ultimately, he sacrificed. And if we lead that way with optimism and love, serve, and care, we will have an impact on the people around us. And this is the time to focus on doing that. You got to take care. You got to make sure that you are right with God. But when you're right and you're there, right, and you're surrendering and his strength, you will now be a greater strength to others. And I believe he's calling us to do that.
Hey, John, we got one more last question coming in. One word answer. Who did you care and share about when you were growing up? Mets or Yankees?
Yankees. I was a Yankees fan. Just feel free to follow me, Jon Gordon 11 on Twitter, JON Gordon 11, or if you want to reach out to me, if I can ever help in any way, if you get discouraged, reach out. I'm on Instagram, and also my email just is jongordon@jongordon.com, JON Gordon @jongordon.com. If you ever need encouragement, you're going through a tough time, just email me. I will respond. I also send out a weekly positive tip. That might help as well. God bless you guys.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining us tonight and listening to John's wisdom. We will be doing this again on May 6th virtually. We look forward to virtually seeing you then. And John, thank you again.